Never before have we been faced with so many choices about how we should think, act, and live. How should we spend our time, our resources, and our money?
Blessed are the pure in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven.
How do we view ourselves and those around us?
Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted.
How can we find true success and lasting happiness?
Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the land.
How can we know what is right and true?
Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God.
How can we make sense of suffering and loss?
Blessed are they who are persecuted for the sake of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven.
And those of us who want to continue with Jesus need to choose Him and choose each other in a deeper way.
Welcome to the choices we face.
Hey, welcome to another week of The Choices We Face. So many wonderful people God is raising up all over the world. We have Peter Herbeck right here with us as our co-host and Director of Missions for Renewal Ministries. And we have a very special woman named Pam Stenzel. Welcome, Pam.
Good to be with you, Ralph.
Yeah, it's good to have you. I've heard Pam speak twice at Legatus meetings, and I just think what the Lord has given you to do is just so important, and you do it so well, and I just really feel the hand of the Lord on you. You know, and with such courage and such clarity. Pam is from the Twin Cities area, Minneapolis, St. Paul area, and she has a mission of speaking to young people about the facts about sex. But that doesn't do it justice. Let's take a look at this little clip of you kind of doing what you do, and then we'll talk about how it all got started and what's going on.
Today we've got over 30 sexually transmitted diseases, 30% of them absolutely incurable. That means you get one of these diseases and you've got it for life. Before I started speaking and traveling full time, I spent 9 years counseling in crisis pregnancy centers in Chicago and in Minneapolis, St. Paul. And for 9 years, I would have girls in my office every day saying, "Pam, I didn't know." And if somebody would have told me that this was going to be the result of the choice I was making, I'd have made a different choice. No one told me. I began to ask these girls in my office, what could we have said? What could someone have said to you before you made your choice that might have helped you to have made a better choice? And after 9 years, I realized that there were a lot of students out there making decisions about sex, having absolutely no idea what the consequence of that choice would be. It's what we're going to talk about today. Girls are bad at this. Guys will never say this. Girls say this to me every day of my life. Well, Pam, I wasn't going to have sex, and I meant to wait, and I didn't mean to do that. You know, it just happened. Here's my favorite one, girls. It was an accident. What, were you walking to get your mail naked? Some guy happened to be jogging by. He was naked. That would be an accident. It was an accident. My goal today isn't to decide for you what you're going to do. Y'all can do whatever you want. My goal is that no one would be able to leave tonight and ever again have to say to a physician, to a counselor, to a parent, to your future husband or wife, "Nobody told me. I didn't know." Tonight you're going to be told. What you choose to do when you walk out of here is completely up to you.
Well, Pam, obviously you're telling it like it is. And tell us exactly what you're doing and how it got started, and what you see your ministry as. And
well, as you heard me say there, I spent 9 years working in crisis pregnancy centers, working with girls who came in for a pregnancy test. And to date me a little bit, I started back in the early 80s. And back then, we were concerned about pregnancy. It was like, well, if they're not pregnant, thank you for coming, and out the door. And we were not fully aware of the unbelievable damage the sexually transmitted diseases were doing, especially on girls. And I was just getting devastated by these girls coming in. Well, I didn't know that. No one told me I could end up with pelvic inflammatory disease and cervical cancer and a hysterectomy at 20. I mean, I didn't know these things. And I started doing what we often do. Well, blaming everyone else for not telling kids what they ought to know. And finally, I think the Holy Spirit just puts his finger on it. He says, well, quit whining about who's not telling kids something, and you go, you do it, And so I started speaking, and about early 90s, just really, Minneapolis, Minnesota, Wisconsin, kind of my area. And the first video came out in 1993, and we've subsequently produced 5 different projects, and we have to update. With students, you have to update. As you can tell already, my hair is shorter and longer, and clothes you wear get changed, so you have to kind of keep doing it over. But
before we go further, tell us your website, how people can get these videos and materials.
It's pamstenzel.com.
Well, that's pretty
so
good.
just very easy. Spell my name, you can find it, Stenzel, pamstenzel.com. And we have products both for churches, for youth groups, for Catholic schools, and also for public schools. There are 2 countries in the nation, and I speak all over the world. My videos now have been translated in 11 languages and are used around the world. There are 2 countries in the world in which I am not allowed to say God on a public school campus, the United States and Canada. So in this country, we have to take out the faith component of it, but it's still true, regardless of whether we say God or not.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So you're starting to talk around Minneapolis, St. Paul, Wisconsin area, and then one thing must have led to another.
It did. I just started getting a lot of calls. And when I went to my board of the Crisis Pregnancy Center and said, I really believe God's calling me, to do this. And at first they were like, you can't leave us, and then we had a lot of time of prayer, and they said, selfishly, we would like you to stay, but we know God's calling you beyond that. And I will say that probably one of the biggest fear that teenagers have, and really the reason I got started in this, was to deal with unplanned pregnancy. Pregnancy is the biggest fear of teens who are having sex, even today, 30 years after a lot of a disease crisis here. And pregnancy is the least of the consequences of sex outside of a marriage relationship. Pregnancy survivable. I mean, you can live through it. I've lived through it 3 times. A few extra pounds here and there hasn't killed me yet. And yet I'd have girls come in for pregnancy tests scared out of their mind. And when I would tell them the test is negative, like they're not pregnant, they'd look at me like, oh, thank you very much. And I'm like, wait a minute, have you been tested for syphilis, gonorrhea, herpes, chlamydia, trichomonas, vulvodynia, arthritis, hepatitis B, hepatitis C, HPV, HIV? You've been tested for that? They're like, I live in Ann Arbor. I don't live in Detroit. I mean, why would I need to be tested for that? Yeah. And they're only worried about being pregnant. And it's time that as parents, certainly my generation, and as young people understand that pregnancy is the least of the consequences. But one of the reasons I got into this altogether is because of teenage pregnancy. And I'm able to talk with the students about if you find yourselves pregnant and you didn't intend to be, you've got a lot of difficult choices. There are no easy way out. The girl says, now fix this. I'm pregnant, I'm scared, I didn't want to be. And they want you to fix it. There's no fix. Every choice you have at this point is going to bring pain. Some worse than others. Abortion is horribly painful. And one of the things I think we're finally beginning to acknowledge as a culture, and it's probably because women are finally beginning to admit the pain that they've suffered for years because of a past abortion that maybe they didn't even tell anyone, is that abortion hurts women. Abortion never fixes a problem. Not only does it take the life of an innocent child, it hurts women. Parenting as a teen is not an easy choice. I mean, the #1 indicator of poverty in the United States has nothing to do with race or where you live. Nothing. When we watch the scenes in New Orleans and then we hear things like Kanye West saying George Bush doesn't like black people, it has nothing to do with race. The #1 indicator of poverty in this nation is single-parent households in the age of that young girl when she began parenting alone. Teen moms. That is the #1 indicator of poverty in this nation today. Serious consequences to young girls deciding to parent children in their teens. Third option a young girl has, which I happen to think is the best, not without pain, is adoption. The ability of a young girl to take the child she's carried with her for 9 months, loves with everything she is, to say, I want what's best for my child. I'm willing to go through this 9 months of pain and probably a lifetime of some grief in order to do what's best for my child. And I just think that is one of the most beautiful pictures of Christ-like selfless love. And I have a personal reason for that. 42 years ago, right here in Michigan, a young 15-year-old became pregnant and had a lot of difficult choices to make, maybe more so than some teenage girls. She was raped. An abortion was legal in Michigan for rape in the 60s, but this 15-year-old girl chose to give her child life, and then to place that child with an adoptive family. And that child was me.
Wow.
My biological father is a rapist. I don't even know my ethnicity, but I am still a human being. And I still have value. And my life isn't worth any less than any of yours just because of the way I was conceived. And I do not believe that I deserved the death sentence because of the crime of my father. And I've listened to the rhetoric my whole life growing up, listened to people say, well, every child should be wanted and planned. And I've actually heard this in the church. Mm-hmm. Well, I wouldn't have an abortion, but if it were rape, mm-hmm. You're a
Yeah.
mistake, Pam.
Yeah.
You know, I don't believe that. I believe every child is wanted by
Yeah.
someone,
Yeah.
and that God actually had a plan even for me.
He sure did. He sure did. And it's so wonderful that your mom gave you up for adoption and that she didn't give you the death sentence, really.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it was, I wear this, and some of you may have seen Senator Rick Santorum wearing his, and he has a new book called It Takes a Family, and we wear these bracelets, Family. The proceeds of these bracelets go to Father Stan in the Bronx, but it stands for Forget About Me, I Love You. Family is forget about me, I love you. And my birth mother, as a young 15-year-old, was able to forget about what might have felt good to her in the short term, and to love me enough to go through that 9 months and give me a life and to give me a family. I tell you, I'm the oldest of 8 children, 7 of us adopted. The most amazing family in Michigan, anywhere, if you want to look, and my family, they're all still there. My mom was one of 12, 9 girls and 3 boys. 6 of those 9 girls had trouble having children, fertility problems. There are 38 adopted grandchildren out of the 87 in that family. We are the United Nations if you come to visit us. It's very awesome. And I have seen adoption work, and I'm not without pain. I mean, you know, there are always a struggle. The struggle with your own biological children, by the way, much less, you know, taking on children who've had some background and some pain. But overall, what we've said is that every child deserves a family and deserves that chance at life.
Pam, what is, as you're talking, and listening to you, watching on television there, the question I have is, what's really going on in this area with young people? You hear, one day in the paper they say kids aren't having sex as much as they used to. They're saying no. Then others are saying no, they want it more than ever. It's out of control. And what's really happening?
I will
out
tell
there?
you what's really happening, and the reason you're seeing the dichotomy is because of this. Now, when I was in high school, and I'm going to go back to the late 70s, you can maybe go back further than that, but back then, there were kids I knew that had sex. I mean, we were not this perfect. I mean, there were people who had sex before they were married.
Sure.
But typically, in my generation, they were kids who had been dating someone for 2 years, got carried away in the backseat of the car, right? And, oh, we shouldn't have done it, but, you know, and they were in pretty committed relationships, and they had sex. Average number of sexual partners for people under 30 today is 27.2. This is not what's going on with our kids. What our parents need to understand is we've got 2 very distinct group of teenagers today. We've got a group of teenagers who are choosing to not have sex, and they are not like my generation. I mean, I didn't have sex before I was married, but it was probably because I thought my parents would kill me. And and I did not necessarily announce it to the world. Do you know what I'm saying? I wasn't running, you know, I wasn't wearing my I'm a Virgin t-shirt and wearing my pure, you know, True Love waist ring. This group of kids that are not having sex are doing it loudly. They're doing it in a counterculture, almost a rebellious way. They're like, we are not having sex, I don't care what you're doing. And they're not going to get carried away in the backseat of the car because they have a value system. They're saying we are waiting to have sex until we're married. Not till we're ready, not till we feel it's right, not till someone asks us and we can't say no. They've made a conscious value decision. That's that group of kids. There's another group of kids over here who are having sex, and they're having a lot of sex with a lot of partners, completely indiscriminately. It is void of intimacy, it is void of care. It is hooking up, it's friends with benefits, and as I said, the average number of partners now has become 27.2 because sex is now just something you kind of do, and it's not, it doesn't communicate.
Is that before marriage, or are you saying annually, or what is that, 27?
Before, well, under 30, people under 30, the average number of partners that they have had. So we're talking about that generation.
Sure.
If we get older, we're going to see that number go down because people in my generation did not have that many partners on an average basis, right? So this is the shift. And what parents need to understand is your child, your teenager today, is going to fall into group A or group B. There is not a lot of gray area. So if your child becomes sexually active, the chances that they're going to be in this group of students that's having a lot of indiscriminate sex is extremely high. And or your child is going to make a firm commitment to chastity. There's just not not an in-between.
What do you say to parents who say, look, the majority of kids are going to do it anyway, and I can't prevent them from doing it, so the best thing I should do is help them have safe sex and give them condoms and artificial contraception and all that kind of thing to solve the real problem they'll have in their life if they...
Then what would that be? What would the real problem be if...
For parents, I think people they mostly think about having a baby, prematurely, right?
There's a few things I need to say that. First is this. Birth control, putting your daughter on hormonal birth control, increases her risk of infection with a sexually transmitted disease 10 times. A girl who is on hormonal birth control is 10 times more likely to contract a disease than if she were not taking that drug. This girl is going to end up sterile or dead. Thanks, Mom. Glad you cared. Glad you took care of that little problem. Condoms provide very little to no protection from bacterial infection, chlamydia, gonorrhea. I mean, they can on occasion. There does need to be some exchange of body fluid, but it's about 50%. Okay, that's not good. Okay, 50% of the time they're going to protect you from a bacterial infection is not good. Bacterial infections are curable. The problem is they cause infertility, pelvic inflammatory disease, and permanent sterility in women. I'm not sure most girls are into that. Condoms provide minimal protection from HIV. Though some will say 80% used correctly. 80% of the time they will protect you from HIV, which is a fatal virus, by the way, infecting both males and females. 80% to me, you know, if you're going to have sex one time in your life, you know, like take that bullet, stick it in your gun, and put it up to your head, you know, you got a 1 in 6 chance of dying, you know. You could live, probably. But if you did that every week, every Friday night for a year, now what are your chances of getting that bullet event? Every Friday night, you're going to pick up that gun and do this. You can die. It's a matter of time. It's not a matter of permanent protection. Then, the most common STD out there, human papillomavirus, kills more women in the United States via cervical cancer than does AIDS. It's causing horrendous problems with hysterectomies in girls as young as 18, 19, and 20 years old. Human papillomavirus, the #1 STD in the nation. 50% of our kids who've had sex are already infected with at least one strain of this virus. It's been on the news a little bit later because they're trying to find a vaccination. They may have found one that works against some types. Problem they don't explain is that if you've already been infected, if you're sitting here as a female who's 18 and you already got it, vaccination is not going to help you. Might help the next generation a bit, but we still don't know for sure. Completely able to, you know, HPV can be prevented by only having sex with one person who's only been with you. The problem is condoms provide no protection at all from HPV used correctly. None. HPV and herpes, by the way, which is another very common STD, are transmitted by skin contact. All it takes is skin contact in the genital area and you're infected for life, and will infect everyone you have genital contact with after that. What kids don't understand, and what we have not communicated, is that the only safe sex is a safe partner. I could have sex, and I know this has never been said on your show before, but we'll try and I could have sex 1,000,000 times with my husband who's only been with me and never get a disease. Never use a condom. Never once get an STD. I could have sex once with some guy I meet at the hotel over here in Detroit, use a condom and be infected forever. Has nothing to do with latex. Yeah. It has to do with a partner. But the problem is we got people out there thinking they can have multiple partner sex, and if they would be safe by using latex. Absolutely not true.
You know, Pam, we're going to take a little break now for an important message, but when we come back, I want to ask you, what advice would you give parents, you know, faced with this culture, faced with this reality, or grandparents, and what can parents and grandparents do about the situation? So we'll be right back.
If you're searching for ways to grow in prayer and holiness and reading and sharing the good news, join us this summer at the Renewal Ministries Institute. Biblical scholars and lay missionaries join the Renewal Ministries staff to provide dynamic teachings on Scripture, evangelization, and the spirituality of the great saints. To find out more about the Renewal Ministries Institute, call 734-662-1730 today or visit us on the web at renewalministries.net.
Hey, we're talking to Pam Stenzel, who has done so much good to talk to so many young people about what's really going on in the area of sex today. And Pam, I'm just kind of wondering, what advice would you give to parents who kind of know that something not good is happening? You know, what can parents do to help their kids?
Well, I think, let me first say that I'm a parent, and I have 3 children. I have a daughter who is now a sophomore in college. She's 19. I have a son who's 18 and a son who is going to be 11. So I've kind of lived through the high school years a little bit with my own students while I've been doing this. And one of the things I think parents have to understand, there's a few really key things here. Number one is this, that I will never stand before God and answer for what my children choose to do. I will answer for what I did, for how I taught, for the rules I had in my home, for the faith that I passed to my children. I will answer to God for me, not for them. And I think, you know, I have rules about dating in my house. I thought they were strict. This is what I would do. No dating at all until you're 16, at all. Don't ask, don't whine. It doesn't happen in my home, ever. Primarily to protect our girls. The second rule I had was no single dating, one guy, one girl alone on a date at all until graduation from high school. My kids had to date in groups. I tease them 4 or more. 16 is my preference. Just the whole group of you to go out.
Would be okay.
That's
too,
fine.
but a couple
Just
bus
get a bus.
loads, yeah.
We'll just all go out. And I teased. I said that was a rule in my house, by the way. My parents had those rules, and I'm a semi-well-adjusted adult. And I tease kids and say I thought group dating was fun. I got to date more than one guy at one time. Right? So I mean, we had fun. I mean, dating was about friendship and doing things together, not this, you know, stuff that's going on now. And so I'll have parents say to me, well, those rules are really strict. Your kids are going to rebel.
Yeah.
So, what'd y'all do? Have a little powwow with your teenager and ask what rules they were planning to obey? You know, because heaven forbid I would have a rule you're not going to obey. Yeah. That would be far too much work. You tell me what you're going to obey, I'll have that rule. I mean, this is insane. I'm the parent. When you're 42, terrorize your own children. This is not, you know, and here's what I want to say to my generation, because we're worse. My generation. I was not called to be my daughter's buddy. She does not have to like me.
Yeah.
This is not a popularity contest.
Yeah.
I'm the parent, you are not. This is how it goes. And I think too many of my generation are so much more interested in being their kid's friend and their kids thinking they're cool and I don't know what it is, self-esteem crisis in my generation or what the problem is. But that's the number. The other thing that I think parents need to hear is that our kids want to hear from us. And you know, it astounds me that even in the secular world, in secular psychology, and that's my background, but in the secular world, we have acknowledged that if parents talk to their kids about drug use, it makes a difference. If parents are all over their kids about where they've been and who they were around, and we have the commercials, I see them. We are already telling kids, talk to your kids about smoking, it matters.
Yeah.
But you can't talk to your kids about sex? Because that doesn't matter. My values, my looking at my children and telling them what I expect of them and why, and the dangers if they choose not. I'll tell you right now, my kid will die from having multiple partner sex much quicker than he will from a cigarette. And yet in this, culture, it's politically correct for parents to tell their kids not to smoke. But for some reason, it's not politically correct to tell your kids to wait to have sex until they're in a committed, permanent marriage relationship. It's insane. It's insane. And we talked earlier about the fact that I had a public health nurse say this. Well, Pam, good parents tell their kids not to have sex, right? But if they're going to, they should use a condom. Okay, if she did not think I was a fanatic right-wing lunatic before I opened my mouth at this point, I looked at her and I said, here's the deal. That would be like me telling my daughter, Kara, I don't want you to shoplift. It's not a good thing, it's not right. But the most important thing, Kara, is that you don't get caught. Because I'm going to have to drag my tail end down to the station, pick you up, it's going to be on your record, it'll be in the paper, and everyone in our small town will know that you were shoplifting. So, Kara, I'm going to take you down to the mall, and I am going to teach you how to shoplift without getting caught. Now, understand I don't want you to do this. Please don't. But in case you're in the mall with your friends and they're all doing it and you cannot help yourself, this is how you do it without getting caught. What have I taught my daughter? I've taught her to shoplift. And what I have said,
that's true.
what I've said theologically and morally is that, Kara, it's not important whether you do the right thing or the wrong thing. It's important that you don't get caught.
Right.
It's important that you don't get caught. Do you understand? What does it profit a man if he gains the world and loses his soul? I am more concerned about my daughter's soul, about spending eternity with my daughter. AIDS is not the enemy. An unplanned pregnancy is not the enemy. An STD is not the enemy. A broken heart is not the enemy. The enemy is my daughter believing she could shake her fist in the face of a holy God without consequence and losing her soul in the end.
That is so true and so awesome and so little said, and it's so good that you're saying it.
Yeah.
It really
Well,
is.
people don't like you when you say things like that. They'd rather be safe and,
Sure.
you know.
That's true. I mean, we're focused on evangelization, and parents are more concerned about their kids getting high SAT scores and more concerned about them getting good jobs and good, making money and et cetera, than saving their soul.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's pretty much the same
And
thing.
it's upside down. It's backwards. It makes no sense.
There's a line in Scripture that says, love wisdom more than health or beauty. And our culture is saying, oh, no, love health and beauty more than wisdom.
Oh, yeah.
It's just like totally upside down and reversed. And you're coming at it from this angle, but it's like a culture-wide problem in all kinds of areas of truth. And it really is rooted in a lack of reverence for God, a lack of good fear of God, a lack of understanding who He is and who we are, and our whole culture is shaking their fists in the face of God, and it's having all kinds of disastrous implications.
There's that Romans 1 passage where it says, because they refuse to honor God and to give Him thanks, our identity falls apart. If we don't order ourselves rightly to God, and it has concrete, they're talking there about homosexuality, and just that lack of sexual control and identity is the result of failing to acknowledge God and to give Him thanks with our life, and to say, we can do it without you, God. You know, and that's a lot what's going on.
And it's a spiral downward, and the consequences are personal, then they become familial. And then as a culture and a society, as a nation, the consequence, it's you know, we always talk about that little rock you can throw in and there's a ripple of good that can be done by one good act.
Right.
When you sin, it does the exact same thing. You throw that sin into the lake, and the ripple effect of damage that can cause can be generational.
Good. Pam, you know, I think there's a lot more that you have to share. Would you be willing to come back next week and
Sure.
continue the conversation?
Would love to.
Okay, great. You know, there's people who didn't see this program today that should have. And you who are listening right now, you who are watching right now, have a role to play. Get them to tune in next week. Pam's coming back, and there's lots of people who need to hear what she has to say. Also, this program will be available on our website. You can just go to our website, www.renewalministries.net, click on TV, click on the Pam Stenzel program, and you'll be able to watch it anytime, day or night, and invite your friends and relatives to. And don't forget Pam's website, www.pamstenzel.com, and you can get all her materials and tapes. You can have Pam in your home for an hour at a time, and you can sit your kids down and have them listen to Pam. And this message really needs to get out. I've written a booklet called My 5 Most Important Decisions, and we'd like to make it available to you at no cost, just for the asking. If you call the 800 number or write to the address, we'll send it to you, because we've got some decisions to make about who we're going to follow, who we're going to believe, who we're going to listen to, who we're going to obey, who we're going to trust. If we trust Jesus, if we obey Jesus, nothing else matters. Until next week, this is Ralph Martin and Peter Herbeck and Pam Stenzel wishing you the very best, a life lived in accordance with the truth of Christ, with His love, with His grace, with His mercy.
Every day we're faced with decisions, both great and small. Some decisions seem small and insignificant, while others can be confusing and overwhelming.
Where should I go to college?
Is this the right job for me?
Should we start a family?
But God has called each one of us into existence for a purpose, a glorious and eternal purpose.
Hi, I've written a booklet called My 5 Most Important Decisions, and I think you'll find these decisions really useful for your own life as well. To receive the free booklet, call Renewal Ministries at 1-800-282-4789, or write to us at the address on your screen, or visit us on the web at renewalministries.net.